Today we're talking all about how to integrate the app Kyno into our post-production workflow. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and... Currently, Finder is primarily what I use for my workflow. But there's this app that's been out for a while that I've been keeping tabs on. And they've just had an update a couple days ago, and you purchased this app, and this is Kyno. And while you've had a chance to play with it, I did download a trial version just to kind of see what it could do for me. And I wanted to take some time today to evaluate my current workflow and see if you can convince me by the end of this episode whether Kyno is worth it.
Okay, let's see what I can do.
My hope is that this will be beneficial to a lot of our audience who is curious about streamlining their workflow and making their life easier. So, after every shoot, I will import my media, bring it into the Finder, and I will copy everything into a pre-created folder structure. So here I've got production media, I've got my media files, and I've already batch renamed them. If you select them and right-click, I use a custom automator service to batch rename these files. And so that's how I got a lot of these custom file names instead of just these sort of nonsensical camera names. One thing you can see here, though, is I did record this with the Panasonic GH5, and these are 422 10-bit files, and you cannot preview these files on Mac OS at present, which is a major bummer. Once you bring them into Final Cut, you can preview them. Something like Edit Ready, you can sort of play them back, but here there's nothing, there's no preview. So I can get as far as batch renaming, but I can't really go into the files and preview them and add any other information, take or scene, because I just literally have no idea what's on these files. Now, what I could do is I could transcode these, and I don't know where I learned this tip. I think it was an article on fcp.co, but if you go to compressor, you can take any of these presets, let's just say, video sharing services HD. If you right click on them, you can save a droplet.
Although I don't think it's going to work on compressor. The GH5 files only open on Final Cut.
Well, okay, we'll give it a shot, so that maybe that'll shoot a hole in this particular workflow. But in general, if you have a video file, you can create these compressor droplets, and I save them to this folder on my desktop. So it just, you can name them whatever you want, and I actually gave them custom icons and dragged them right into the menu bar, the top bar of my Finder. So if I had a file, I could batch these, or let's just do one for now. I'm just going to drag it on and let's say do HD. I'll get this little window that comes up. I can choose a location. I'll just put it on my desktop and start the batch. And so in the background, that's going to transcode that thing. That is one way to do this. So far in the Finder, the only real drawback is I can't see the 10-bit files. But for any other media, I can batch rename, I can add Finder comments if I wanted to, I can add Finder tags, I can transcode the files, I can do all this within Finder, and that is all free.
And you use the field comment quite a bit, right?
I do. So here I use the comments and I put the camera type, the lens combination that I use, the profile or the recording type. And again, this is back from our other episode, but if I select all these, right click and choose services, add Finder metadata, you can type whatever you want in there. If I added this now with this append checked, it'll add information after this. If I uncheck this and type in there, it'll replace all this text with whatever I type. I don't want to do that now, but this so far works pretty well for me. Now,
but how do you get that into Final Cut?
There are really two ways to bring that into Final Cut, and one would be to open Final Cut and just drag these into Final Cut. And depending on what Final Cut preference you have chosen, it will create a keyword collection for the enclosing folder of this, which in this case would be production media, or any Finder tags you have applied.
But nothing for the comment.
Comments they don't translate at all. So one thing I purchased maybe a year ago was an app called Keyflow Pro. And that is a media asset management program. It has lots of ways of getting metadata into Final Cut Pro, but to date, I've not really been able to figure out how to really integrate that into my workflow. Currently for me, I'm only using Keyflow Pro as literally a media asset management database. So I will pick a folder and it'll give me a way to quickly preview files. So I've got my entire project archive in here, and I can bring up every project I've ever worked on. You can filter by audio and video and images and so forth. And that's great because, say, a client emails me and says, this project we completed in 2015, we need to make a change to it. I can just, twirl down here, navigate to that client's folder, find that project, have access to all the assets immediately. This is all stored on a Synology NAS, so it's all live and online. So it's been great for that, but it doesn't really help me with really the reason I bought the app, which was to add metadata and bring it into Final Cut. I'm just not a huge fan of how that works because none of it translates to the Finder, which means I need Keyflow Pro running at all times in order for that to really be useful to me.
And you still use, even with Keyflow Pro, you still use Finder very separately from Keyflow Pro. You're still very dependent on Finder, right?
Yeah, I use Finder at the start of everything, and then I will use Keyflow Pro to scan the contents of Finder. Because, for example, if I wanted to browse my sound effects library, on Finder that's a little slower, whereas here I can just go in and I can see the waveforms and I can go through and it'll scroll through. It would be nice if all these icons showed me a live thumbnail, because then I could very quickly see the nature of that sound effect without having to preview it. But this is still quicker than Finder. I'm still missing something. There's still something I was wanting more out of this app that I'm not figuring out how to use. This is kind of where Kyno may come in. Here's where I might need you to take over a bit. So how would you describe, or I guess, okay, let's take Keyflow Pro, and how would you differentiate something like Keyflow Pro, a media asset management software, to Kyno?
Well, there are a couple of things that I think that a media asset management should have, which is to keep track of online and offline hard drives or storage volumes, and
Okay.
Keyflow Pro does that. And the other thing is to have workflows, automation based on certain criteria. Maybe a file moves into a specific place, and then that triggers a workflow. For example, uploading somewhere, or changing the name, or anything like that, or assigning automatically a keyword. So what I'm looking for there on a MEM is automation.
Okay.
I want things to happen as automatically as possible. Now, there aren't really great media asset management software out there. There are many of them. There's CatTV, there's Cantamo Portal, there is... now I'm starting to blank on some names here, but there are quite a few of them, and all of them have ups and downs. But every time that I used one of them, there was so much work that you needed to put in that it would make anyone just give up and just not use it.
Okay.
Now, yeah, Keyflow Pro, in terms of ingestion, for example, you just came from a shoot, you have an SD card and you need to plug in. You can do that within Keyflow Pro.
Yeah.
But you have only two options of importing a file. You either leave it in place, so if it's on your SD card, it's going to stay on your SD card, not useful. The other one is to copy to library, which not useful either.
So Final Cut Pro 10 allows editors to keep all their media external to the software, which is how most entities work. Or you can bring the media into the library, which is a managed library. I never use that. So being forced to go from Keyflow Pro to media inside this library bundle is a no-go for me. So that's why I haven't integrated that at all.
You could do that if the media already exists in its final resting location. And then you import it into Keyflow Pro and you leave it in place and it's there. But the problem is that as SD cards import or RAD minimags import, it doesn't work because you don't really want to put it in the bundle, because at that point, it's in a specific place that people don't have access to. And most of the time, the bundle is never on the shared storage volume, because Keyflow Pro themselves, they say do not put the bundle into a shared storage. You're gonna get crashes. So that bundle is on an actual computer, and and as far as media asset management is concerned, there are other features that Keyflow Pro doesn't have that I think would be very important. One, being cross-platform, being able to for people on Windows or Linux be able to access that information. The other one is to have a web interface. It doesn't have a web interface. The third one is the possibility of running on a server that's not a Mac, and all of that are minuses for Keyflow Pro for me as a MAM in order to use with several other people. Yeah.
Now, you already purchased Kyno, and you've played with it a little bit. And again, I downloaded the trial in advance of this episode just to play around a bit. But knowing what you know and what I've just shown you about my Finder workflow, convince me. What are the positives of Kyno? What can it do that I can't currently do that justifies the price? Because as we said, Finder, of course, is free. Kyno has a cost.
Yeah, before diving into Kyno itself and showing it, I think the very first thing that I would mention is that for your workflow, for example, Kyno is like Finder on steroids. It's like Super Finder. It's that Finder that we are actually looking forward to that one day Apple is going to make. But the history of Finder is kind of precarious, so I don't know if we're ever going to see something like that. So first of all, it's Finder on steroids. So everything that you can do on Finder except the colorful tags you can do on Kyno. So that would be thing number one. So it can do everything that Finder can do.
But it doesn't integrate Finder tags yet?
No, it does not integrate Finder tags. You have the same name tags, and those tags, they also translate back to Final Cut if you send it. But it doesn't write the tags on the file itself. Now, there is a small part in the website where they say why they are not doing that and why they think that's not necessarily a good idea, but apparently there are people that have been asking for it and they have been considering as a feature for a future release. So it's possible that we're going to see that.
So if Kyno doesn't integrate Finder tags, does it have a batch renaming feature, and B, does that batch renaming translate to the Finder, or is it only locked inside Kyno?
Yes and yes. So for that person that has not gone into Automator and created their own renaming thing, you're gonna get that already built into Kyno in a very easy way, which is a right-click, go to rename, and then you have the same thing that we have. And two, yes, it renames the actual files on Finder. So once you batch rename within Kyno, it's gonna be on Finder as well.
That's excellent. Okay, so that's a big check for me. Because I like, the reason I like the Finder files to have the names I've given them is because, as we've said, the camera name is useless to me. P1076 doesn't tell me anything about the file. I don't know if it's an interview or a B-roll shot, indoor, outdoor, anything. So renaming the file is important to me. And because I do a lot of work at the Finder level, or because even if you're using something like Kyno, at some point you're managing files in the Finder. You might have to transfer them from the Finder to a NAS or to an external drive. But at some point, or for example, I'm editing in Final Cut Pro 10. But Final Cut Pro 10 isn't going to be around forever. So say it disappears in 5 years and it goes to Final Cut 11 or whatever, or I switch to Resolve, who knows. If a client needs me to revisit an old project, I'm still going to have to get that original media. And so being able to know what the content of those files are is meaningful to me. So yes, having Kyno integrate with the Finder at that capacity is a really convincing argument. What else you got?
Well, I think the most interesting thing now we were actually to show Kyno. Otherwise, we're just talking a lot of the features, but we are not really showing them. And I think people are gonna really get more interested and awaken that idea of workflows once they start seeing it.
Let's see what you got.
So here it is, the interface of Kyno. The very first thing that we see, and the only thing that we see at this point, is the folders that we have put as shortcuts. So these are folders that are inside these two different hard drives. One is my cache hard drive, the other one is my project SSD hard drive. Both of them are SSD, one internal and the other one external, and all the other volumes that I have mounted. So if I wanted to put one of the volumes from my Kyno app up here, I could just drag that, and I'm gonna have that as a shortcut up here. Now I'm gonna just hide that for now, and let's take a look before we see any files. And what we have here, we have interface very similar to Finder as command 1 for thumbnails, command 2 for list view, and command 3 as a player for whatever media that we have selected. We have filters here if we want to see only video, video and audio, audio and images, just images, or any combination that you want here.
So far that's very similar to the Keyflow Pro interface.
In
terms of sorting and filtering. Okay.
It is. And then, for example, imagine that you're looking at your whole NAS, right? You have thousands of videos there. And I can show you this right here. If we enable one feature that I find very useful on Kyno, which is drill down, which is basically getting all your folder structure and making it flat, looking at just the contents of every folder and subfolder. So here I have every folder and subfolder on my NAS.
So you mean as opposed to digging down manually and searching inside? Okay.
Because I could be coming here and drilling and drilling.
And you're looking for, say, just video files here, correct?
Yeah, I'm looking for, let's say, a specific video file. But if I drill down the whole structure here, you're going to see, because this is the very first time that Kyno is looking at my NAS, I'm going to have a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff from months ago, maybe years ago. And one of the things that is very interesting in terms of sorting is this time. When was the media recorded? So if I put that the media was recorded 24 hours ago, I only will see stuff that was created 24 hours ago. So that helps a lot figuring out and finding what you're looking for without changing any metadata at all, just for starters. Okay, this is the time, and you could also sort by other things, for example, like frame rate, rating, start and end time, camera name, tags, video codec, audio codec. And this is just sorting, of course. You can also filter by all of those things as well, and others. For example, you could be sorting by title, description, scene, shot, take, angle, real camera. So it can become very granular.
Now, I noticed there's a search function, but is there something like a smart folder or like a Boolean search operation?
Yes. Yes, you can do that. Okay. So for example, let me search here within my NAS. I'm going to do a filter, date filter. And the created date, modified or modified. I can have both at the same time apparently. Or not. No, just created. And I can do in between. And then I can choose the dates. So for example, within this last week, for example, I can put there. Wow, the thing is burning here looking at every single media that's inside my NAS.
Okay, well, you're looking at terabytes and terabytes of data, so it's going a little slow.
Over 1 gigabit Ethernet, because I'm connected right now to the NAS over 1 gigabit.
Okay, well, I trust you that it works. I think most of us know how this type of search functionality works. I just wanted to see if it was possible in Kyno.
Yeah, and I mean, a date, title of the file, type, those are pretty common within Finder, right? But there are others that are even more interesting here, which are, for example, searching by frame rate, searching by frame size. And of course, once you have metadata in, you can use the search field, and then you can literally find anything that you have written as a metadata within a file. And
that's excellent.
That's where I want to get at, because that's where metadata starts becoming extremely valuable. When you start being able to search for things.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, though, would you mind pulling up? Do you have any GH5 10-bit files?
Yes, actually, all of these that you're looking at here on the screen, they're all at GH5.
Okay, so you can't see them on the Finder, but you can see them in Kyno.
That's true. That's true. So, for example, if I come on Finder and look for them, now knowing where they are, projects, YouTube. Kyno, media, original, Kyno overview demo, here. Look how much I'm having to click to get all the way there. Yeah. Hold on, is the ones from the 28th, so it's not in this one. this actually easily shows you the advantage of Kyno in terms of finding things. Okay, here it is. For example, this 2019, 02, 07, file number 7. This is a GH5 10-bit file that I cannot open. Yes.
But you can in Kyno. Okay, that's another plus for me.
Yes. Now, we have seen already the interface of Kyno with showing a little bit of what we can do, but we don't have any content yet. So let's see what happens when you actually need to ingest content, something that you would normally do on Finder. But let's see how it will look like if we do it on Kyno. Ready for that?
I am ready.
So I'm going to connect an SD card, and you're going to see here that as soon as I connect that SD card, all the thumbnails are going to get loaded here. Kyno went directly to the SD card. It knows that we want to take a look at that. So I can, now again, I'm looking at thumbnails with command 1. Command 2, I can change to a list view. And command 3, I can go into a player, and I can actually play back this file on Kyno. And notice one thing, I'm actually playing back a 422 file. This is actually a 10-bit file.
And we couldn't do that on Finder.
You can do that on Finder. And
Right.
with command right arrow, I can skip to the next video and preview that. This one off speed of 100 frames a second. And the next one is a 10-bit file as well again. And now interesting is those are HLG files, and what Kyno does, it does a transform to Rec 709 for you to preview those files. So you're seeing within the Rec 709 range.
It looks like it's a little slow right now just because it's still importing everything.
No, not really. It's slow right now is because, one, I'm reading from the SD card, and I'm reading from a normal SD card reader in a UHS 1 card reader.
Okay.
Second of all is I'm doing a screen recording. Third, we are on Skype encoding and decoding video, so there's quite a lot going on here.
Cool. Just wanted the viewers to know that Kyno's generally pretty snappy.
Yes, it is. And of course, if it's the very first time that Kyno is looking at an SD card or a volume, it will take some time for it to go there, extract the thumbnails, extract thumbnails in 2 different sizes, and then is going to start taking a look at all the technical parts of the files, like frame rate and all of this, and it definitely takes some time for it to do that. But once it does, Kyno writes these sidecar files that contains all the metadata, all the information about this within the same folder of the file in a hidden folder, in hidden files. So the next time that Kyno needs to go into that folder, it's already going to open a lot faster.
Okay, so Kyno itself isn't keeping a database. It's It's creating little invisible sidecar files along with the media that's brought into it, and just referencing those every time it launches.
Which means that if tomorrow there would be another person working here with me, the only thing that we would need to do would be to install Kyno on their computer, and then they would open the folder where things are, and they would see all the metadata there, because those files, Kyno is actually reading the sidecar files that are in the folder of that content. So Kyno, we already see that it already has that information there, and it will load it.
That's fantastic.
So now connecting to databases.
Now, what else can we do here with Kyno?
Okay, normally you would say, okay, now you just copy and paste to the folder that you want, right? I could come here to my Kyno demo and go into my media original, and I could just drag and drop. Yes, I could do that. But before I ever do that, there is one thing that I learned with you that I kind of like it, which is I don't like the names that the camera gives to the files.
So are you going to go to the original source and rename these in Finder, or what else?
If I would go do that, I could come here, open the SD card, dive into that, right click on it, go into my services, and then rename sequential. And then I would fill out what's the name that I want. It's showing me here a preview of the name. Mm-hmm. And I could say that there will be an index, right? So there will be a number after it. But the thing is, Automator is not really even checking how it's going to look like the actual files once I rename, like all the files. So what Kyno will do here is I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go into rename. It's slightly easier because, one, we are drilling down on the SD card, so we didn't navigate all the way inside the folders. And second of all is just a rename function. And in my case, I'm going to use here my custom name plus index number 1, which is a variation of the custom index that already comes with Kyno. And of course, if you want to create your own file name scheme, you can use one of the ones that come here. They have great ones. Or you can go into Manage, add variables, and use any of these variables here to create your naming scheme. So you could have frame rate automatically appearing on the file name, for example, which could be interesting for some people. Now, mine's gonna just be very simple, and I will call this Kyno overview. Now you can see here that my naming scheme has the date created, the name of that I'm giving, my custom name, and an index. This index has only 2 digits, so I'm gonna change that to 3 digits with the more options here. And there are a few more other things here that you can explore as well. For example, you have replace text in case you ever need to just replace a character or anything like that on the file. And the thing that I was saying that Finder doesn't have, Kyno has here, which is actually showing me which file will have which name. And it does a detection. It checks if it's okay to rename those files. For example, if I would be renaming these files and one of these files that I'm renaming to already existed in my folder, for example, you already have a folder, a file that's called Kyno overview 015, then it would show me an X mark there, and it would tell me that, well, this operation might not be a good idea.
Okay.
So everything checking, I can just start renaming, and pretty fast it's going to rename everything that's on my SD card, and there I have it. It's all renamed.
Well, I can see that it's renamed in Kyno, but what about the actual on the Finder level?
So let's take a look on Finder. I'm going to my SD card, and here we have everything with a different name. And one other thing that's important here to notice is look at the modified date. The modified date stayed as the date that I recorded, which means we are not really modifying the file itself. For example, let's take a look at my desktop here. Sometimes it can happen. Look at this. This file was modified yesterday. Sometimes it happens that if I just rename something, my modified date could change to today, for example. It really depends on the file. It really depends on where you do it. But the only thing that I'm pointing here is that it will not change anything on the file other than name.
That's good. That's nice to see.
Now, before I even copy to my computer, there are a couple of other things that I like to do because I might not be formatting this SD card at all. And later on, I might need to reference the card. That's why I already renamed all of this in the card before it goes to the computer. But there are a couple of other things that I want to add here, and I have option to add a few more fields of metadata here, and I'm adding the ones that actually appear on Final Cut Pro 10. So I'm adding reel, scene, shot, angle, take, and tags. I want to see all of those, and I don't want to see rating, I don't want to see aspect ratio, and I don't want to see duration. I just want to make sure that this is not showing 100 different things here at once.
And on the Finder level, with 10-bit files, I wouldn't be able to add information like scene or take because I can't preview the file. So if you could add those informations that would translate into the right fields on Final Cut Pro 10, you couldn't because you can preview. So how do you add this metadata in Kyno?
Well, several different ways, right? I can go into the file with Command 3 to get into the player. And then here on the right-hand side, I have all of those fields that I just added, including my tags, markers. I can create subclips. This would be one way, but this way is one by one.
Final Cut 10 users don't use quote-unquote subclips.
We use keyword ranges, which is how this translates.
So it does translate to keyword.
It does translate. Ranges. So if you create a subclip here, it translates as a keyword range on Final Cut Pro 10.
Are you able to show us that?
Yeah, so let's try another one that will have a little bit more things changing on the frame. So let me first show another thing here. So we're looking at all of this metadata that can go into Final Cut Pro 10, right? If I come to the menu here, metadata, and then manage metadata presets, I can create presets of all of those fields that I just showed here on the list view. And I created a few of mine. For example, here, when we are recording Get a Grip, I have my presets already set here. So I have the episode number that I go and I change. The shot, it's my shot, which take we are, what is the angle for our multicam, which camera I used, and some tags that go as keywords on Final Cut Pro 10.
Okay.
And all of this is searchable, of course. Now I'm going to use my default here. You see I have my GH5 default. It has some information on description, angle 1, and the name of the camera. So not a lot of things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select all of them. I can either right click and go to assign metadata preset or Command Shift A, and I can choose which one of those presets I want to use. I want to use just my GH5 default and assign. Now it's writing all of that metadata to a sidecar file within the SD card, and I have all of that information. Now, some of these files are Natural Plus profile, and they're 1080p, and they're 100 frames. Some of them, the ones that are in 4K, they're HLG. So all of this metadata that I just put here doesn't translate well to what I'm actually doing. So what I'm gonna do, first of all, I wanna look for my files that are just 1080p. So I'm gonna look for resolution, and I'm choosing here 1080p. Now I'm looking at just my files that are 1080p, and I know that all of them have more or less the same settings. So I'm gonna select all of them. I can right click and go into edit multiple or Command Shift M. And now I can edit the metadata in all of them at the same time. So I'm gonna do here Natural Plus. That has some changes there on my Natural. This was a 1080p. I don't remember what's the bitrate of the 1080p, but I think it's 100 megabits. Those are 8-bit. They were manual focus. F was super variable, so I'm gonna just leave it. The shutter angle was always 180 degrees. ISO was most of the time 400. White balance was that. And I'm gonna add one more thing here that is 100p on it. Now, on the description field, the way I am using the description field is to put information that we don't have as a metadata on the file, because those files are compressed and the cameras are not writing that metadata there, or at least not in a way that we can see it on Final Cut. So I'm writing everything that normally I would see from a raw file from RedRaw, for example. On RedRaw, I can see most of this.
And a benefit there would be if a client called you and you needed to do some pickup shots for that same project, you would know what camera to use, what settings to use to match that.
But not only that, all of this information that the camera doesn't write, now that I'm writing kind of manually, that's all going to be searchable later on. That's all going to be searchable. So if I'm going to be looking for files that are just HLG, boom, I can just put HLG and I'm going to find it. If I'm looking for things that were recorded in ISO 400, boom, I'm going to find it. So that's more or less where I'll get it. Nothing else. I'm going to put a tag here for 100p, and that's it. I'm going to now click OK, and it's renamed on all of them. And the next thing that I need to do is to do my UHD one, that is HLG. So I just changed here the resolution. I'm seeing my 4K ones. I'm going to do Command Shift M. I'm going to change that to HLG. That's 4K 150 megabits, and it was 10-bit instead. The rest is OK, and I can do OK. And now I can go back here and look at all the files that are on the SD card.
Now, information like reel, scene, take, angle, that you can't batch, most likely. I mean, something like angle and reel, perhaps, but scene and take, that would have to be file by file. How would you how could you do that in Kyno?
What I would normally do, it would be something like this. I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to do Command-Shift-M to edit all the metadata at once. And I'm going to start filling in everything that is the same for all of them, right? So, for example, the reel is going to be Kyno overview in Prague. The scene is going to be Prague exterior shots. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but all right. Shot, I'm going to just put shot 1, take 1, angle 1. And I'm going to say that this is Kyno. I'm going to put here tag Kyno. And another one that's going to be YouTube. Another one that's going to be get a grip. And that's it, I think, of tags. So now this is going to apply to all of them. Now see that some of them already have the tag 100p. So I'm just going to be adding that tag to the 100p.
And that's great, but I'm curious because, you're not going to have 20 shot ones. So, or 20 take ones. So how would you
so for example, like what I would normally do is like this, I would fill in everything and then I would start modifying. For example, let's say that these ones here, these are shot 2. Now I can go and just change the shot number. And once I get to the point that is really 1 by 1, I'm going to open into the player. And then I'm going to change this. Okay, this is take 1. So the next one will be take 2. So I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to put take 2. And then I go to the next one.
How are you navigating to the next one?
Command right arrow.
Excellent.
So this is more or less how I would go.
Okay.
And all of this before ever ingesting, right? So now I have a lot of metadata here. You have real information, scene, shot, take, angle. I have tags on it. My description has white balance, ISO, shutter angle, aperture, what type of focus I was using, if it's 10-bit or 8-bit, the recording mode, and the color profile. It's all of that, all there.
Now, if you weren't sitting here explaining this to me as you were going, how long in reality would it take you to add all that information?
It would have taken me less than a minute, more or less.
Okay.
Because if maybe we can try, I don't have any other SD card here, but maybe later on I can try to dig some videos that are not tagged and we can see, but it's about a minute that would take me to just tag an SD card.
So not a big time investment, but it seems to be worth it to me. I'm curious to see how this translates to Final Cut. And I want to mention that all of this stuff translates as well to Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve.
And of course, there is... I've done all of this here, and it is a time investment, but the thing is, what you're going to rip later on, that's going to be the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. So for example, okay, I've done all of this. Now I have 2 options on how to get this media into the final resting place. I can select it, drag, and it's gonna work like Finder. If you're dragging without any modifier, it's gonna move, and you don't really want to move from the SD card to the storage. So you can hold Option, and it's gonna copy. So here it is, an option. And it's going to ask you, do you really want to copy this file? And then, okay, or you can say, do not ask me again. I prefer to be asked just because the standard behavior is to move and not to copy.
Sure.
So I keep on this to ask. And you're going to see here in jobs, it's already gone, it's already copied. So if I come here to original, my file is there with all of my metadata. Now there is a different way of doing that. I'm going to delete this file. The other way of doing that is actually to back up all of your SD card directly to the final place that's going to go, let's say your NAS, and to a backup location, and to another backup location all at once. So the way I can do that is to do Command-Shift-C or coming to File, Copy and Verify. Now, Copy and Verify is going to ask me, what is it that I'm backing up, the source, and if I want my whole SD card, and if I do that, then we have a folder that looks like an SD card. So if you go into Final Cut Pro 10, it's going to actually see as an SD card. Because I don't want that behavior, I will select that I want to back up the folder where the videos are contained. Okay, so that 109 PANA inside DCIM. And I will choose the locations where I want my SD card to go. I could be having like 3 locations, 4 locations. Now, that means that the SD card is copying simultaneously to all of these places. So that might be a good idea, might not be a good idea. Maybe you copy to one place, and from that one place you copy to multiple. So there are different ways that you can do this. So it's really up to the person.
But Kyno is actually verifying the integrity of these files as well?
It is. It's doing a checksum, and then it's writing that checksum on an MHL file that you can actually see and read.
To your knowledge, does Finder perform the same level of checksum?
No, it does not, because to do a checksum, you actually need some processing power. And so that means that if you simply transfer a file to another folder or copy to another folder, it's going to take an X amount of time. If you're doing checksum, is X plus the processing time to check the file at the source and at the destination. But it's actually incredibly fast. So we're going to do this now live here. And I have the SD card going to my internal SSD and my external SSD. And I'm going to give a name to that folder, which will be card 1. And here in the option, in the bottom, I have create media hash list, which is basically create a report about this transfer that I've done. And I'm going to click on copy and verify. So if I come to jobs right here, I can see that just happening now. It's copying at the same time to both locations. So this is 13 gigabytes reading out of a normal SD card reader. So it's going to take at least a couple of minutes to finish that.
So we've got Finder is free, Kyno has a charge. So that's a plus in the Finder category. Finder cannot preview 10-bit files, Kyno can. That's a plus in the Kyno category. Finder does not verify files, Kyno can. That's a plus in the Kyno category. Finder has Finder tags, Kyno does not. So depending on your workflow, that may or may not be a plus in either category. I do use Finder tags, but it's not a deal breaker for me as far as Kyno.
Mainly because you can replace it, right? Because you have the tags within Kyno. So
kind of, yeah. What else can Kyno do? And I still want to see what this looks like when you bring it into Final Cut 10.
Angle, information, all of that you can write before you ever get to Final Cut.
That's true, yeah. You can't really do that in Finder. You could add it as a Finder comment, but then it's not searchable in Final Cut. So that's another plus for Kyno.
Now, we are about to finish copying everything here. So the files are starting to appear on my hard drive. There is another thing that's important here to think is that Kyno has an internal transcoder. So you could be transcoding all your files to a different format if you needed.
Well, I'll mention again, with the compressor droplet, I could already do that on the Finder.
Sure.
How does Kyno do it better?
Well, it can do the 10-bit GH5 files.
Okay.
For starters. The other thing, I mean, once you have a droplet and if you don't think about those 10-bit files, it's pretty similar to compressor. If I show you here, for example, if I go into convert, I have all of these formats: distribution, DNxHT, DNxHR, editing, ProRes, XDCAM, MPEG, Photo JPEG, Cineform, rewrap, which is something that you can also do with compressor for some formats.
Like if you have an AVCHD file.
Yes.
And that'll happen in the background, and you can choose the destination.
It will happen in the background, yes. Now, maybe the most interesting part here is going to be going to Final Cut, right?
That's always the most interesting part.
The other thing that's also interesting about Kyno is that, let's say that you created this footage. I was walking in Prague yesterday, right? So I made all of this video. I'm going to send it to a project on Final Cut, and all the metadata is going to be there. If it would be Finder, I would send all of that information to Final Cut, and then I would have to make my ranges, and then I would have to do my favorites, and then I would have to maybe add all of that metadata that I need. And if one day in the future I need to reuse that footage, maybe a year from now I'm going to use that footage again, I have two options: either to send that footage to the new library and re-add all of that information, or find that old library and copy the files from one library to another. Mm-hmm. If that information is already on Kyno, you can just simply send to Final Cut, and it's sent with that information that was originally there. So I think the reusability in that sense is a positive thing.
And to be fair, we mentioned Keyflow Pro either, and that does earlier, and that does the same thing, except Keyflow Pro doesn't write invisible sidecar files next to each individual file you're managing. It has a database, and so everything has to kind of go into Keyflow and out, and it also goes into the library. And again, that's one of the reasons why I haven't integrated that portion of Keyflow Pro into my workflow, and why I've got these questions for you today about Kyno.
Yeah. So for example, if I look here, I have all my files now copied into Kyno. And if I go into my backup location, those files are there as well. It's reading for the first time, so it's gonna take a little while. Yes, it's reading here. And all of those files are there. So I have it in my backup location and I have it in my main location. All of them with metadata. So I don't need to re-add anything or anything like that. If I come to my Final Cut, I don't have anything on this Final Cut project. And I want to send all of these files to Final Cut. There are two ways that I can do that. One of them is to just drag and drop. And there it goes. It gets imported. Of course, my Final Cut Pro 10 here is set to leave files in place, so it's not creating any duplicates. I'm going to remove here. The other way that I can get that file there, I'm going to put Kyno back into full screen, is to right-click and go into Send to Final Cut Pro 10, or using the Command Shift F. And I can already tell you, I use the keyboard shortcuts quite a lot, so this becomes very quick for you to do these things. And here, I'm going to choose to which library my media is going to go to. So the name of this library is Kyno Overview. So I already have it selected there on the top. And what's the name of the event that I want this to go to? I already have an event called Media. So I'm gonna say to go to Media. I want the files to live in place. Now here on the metadata mapping part, I want my keywords to be created from the tags that I added here on Kyno. So that 100p, get a grip, Kyno, and etc. They're gonna be created as keywords. If I created any subclip, it's also gonna go as a keyword range, and I promised that I would show you that, right? So yes. Let me select one here that's gonna be good. Maybe this one here, because there is a tram that crosses the screen. You see this tram crosses the screen and then goes away, and then I have just the people crossing the street on the other side. So what I wanna do here is I can do find where the tram left the screen, O. So I created this range. I'm gonna click the letter S, and I just created a subclip. And it appeared immediately here as a subclip.
Premiere or Resolve would bring that in as an actual subclip, but in Final Cut that's translated as a keyword range.
Yeah, I'm not 100% how it looks on Premiere, but yeah, it's something like that. And I'm gonna put here a marker saying that there's a taxi. So I just double-clicked M to create a marker and to rename it, the same way as it happens on Final Cut Pro 10. And I'm gonna say taxi. And I could add some description. And here there is the exact information about when it is on the file. So now I have a marker that I can find here, marker called taxi. I have subclips, and I'm gonna just create another subclip somewhere else. I think this one, there's a police car crossing the frame. So here, and then O here, S for the subclip, and there it is. I can name that subclip. So if I option enter, and I'm gonna rename that subclip, I'm gonna say police car, and then click OK. And then just one more thing that I wanna do here is to create a favorite. And favorite for me are only the stuff that's 5 stars. So I'm gonna find one thing here that's 5 stars, this one. And if I just tap 5 on my keyboard, it's gonna give 5 stars. So if I go into here.
Just out of curiosity, so you favorited that entire clip. Is it possible to favorite a range of a clip?
I'm gonna put a rating here of 5 and see what happens.
Okay.
But I have the impression that no. And I'm gonna put another rating of 5 on this one here. So they are all rated. I'm gonna select all of them, Command Shift F to send to Final Cut, and back here to where we were, I want to map as a favorite subclips. Oh, subclips. There you go. That answers the question. Anything created as a subclip is going to go as a favorite. You can check that.
So it won't be a keyword collection, it'll be a favorite.
Let's do this. I'm going to send this first 3 as with the subclip selected. Okay, let me make sure that I have a subclip on that file. Let me do on the second file here. I'm going to have a subclip that goes from here to here. Subclip, yes. Go back to my list view. I'm going to send this first 3 here into Final Cut. Only one of them is the whole clip with 5 stars. The other one has a subclip, and it's marked for the subclip to go as a favorite, and with at least 5 stars to go is a favorite. And if there is a clip that has selected just in and out points, no subclips, no anything else, it would also go as a favorite. So I'm going to leave this as selected. I'm going to do send to Final Cut Pro 10. Immediately goes, opens Final Cut Pro 10, and it's there. Now, we see here that... I see
a range.
Yeah, there it is, the clip. The favorite part in that clip is here. And this other one that has the 5 stars is all favorite. You can also see here that all my metadata came into Final Cut.
Can you show me that in list view in the browser?
And it's all here. The name is here. If I would go into here, you can see everything that's selected. Camera name, which is something that I already added there on the metadata as well, is here. If I wanted to see all the other information like reel, same way as I did on Kyno, I could. So I could do here reel. It's gonna take me forever to do that, but you get the point.
Yeah, no, that's great to see that it translated.
Now let's do the other one, which is to not translate subclips as favorite, right? And see what's gonna happen. And let's see what our keywords here. We have a keyword that's empty. I probably did something.
You created a subclip and you didn't name it.
That's probably it. And I have my 100 frame videos that are here with my tag. And let's go back to Kyno. For the rest of them, now this other one here, I'm gonna create a subclip. This one already has a subclip. No, this is another one. I'm going to call it I and O. I'm gonna give it a name, which will be called accident. And that's it. Okay. And now this time we're gonna come and select all the rest here. Command Shift F. And instead of creating a favorite from subclips, I just don't want that to happen, just from rated clips. And send to Final Cut Pro 10. Now we see here immediately that the accident keyword has been created, and it has just that part of my video that I created. So yeah, it's quite flexible, I would say. You can send the ranges as keyword ranges, or you can send it as favorites. So it's useful. If I didn't add all of that metadata on my files, I wouldn't be able to do some specific searches here. For example, if I look for HLG, it's only going to show me the HLG files because that information is on the metadata. The other one was the Net Plus profile that I had shot with some of the clips. Another one is, for example, well, if I wouldn't have put that 100 FPS, 100p tag on my videos, look at how my slow motion looks on Finder, or on Finder, no, on Spectre, it shows us 25p. So I wouldn't be able to easily identify them because they all show at 25p. I would have to actually play them back to see if they're playing back in slow motion or not. And the fact that I put 100p, I also know that's a factor of 4. So if I wanted to play them back into real speed, it's very easy. I already know that here. So if I look just for 100p, or I click on the keyword, I see all of my slow motion videos, for example. So that's where it starts helping me quite a bit.
Now, we've already tested this, but I want to ask about a collaborative workflow. So you and I, for this show, share media over a network. I've got a Synology NAS, you've got a QNAP, and we've got an interchange of information. If you have a bunch of media that you've cataloged with Kyno and want me to take that media into, say, Final Cut 10 to edit it, how would I get access to that same metadata? So if you've done all the work in the Czech Republic, logging and editing, how do I in the States bring in that media and not have to redo all that work?
Well, besides all of the technical aspects of how it is that we are syncing our our NASs, which is like a whole different
like 12
episode.
more episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we need to know is at the moment, my QNAP and your Synology for the Get a Grip folder, they are identical, including the hidden files. So which means that if a hidden file gets created here or gets created there, it syncs to the other NAS. That means that, for example, if I come here to Get a Grip and to one of the episode medias, for example, I'm gonna drill down into everything here, and I add any information here, that's gonna be written as a hidden file on the folder structure, and it's gonna get to your computer, and then once you open Kyno, you're gonna see exactly the same information there. So once you send to Final Cut Pro 10, all of that information is gonna go there.
So that's pretty instantaneous. And again, to contrast that with Keyflow Pro, if I understand that correctly, everything kind of has to go through Keyflow Pro. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would bring media into Keyflow Pro, do all my tagging, and I hesitate because it doesn't seem instantaneous the way Kyno is. It's like kind of locked inside Keyflow Pro. I can send it to Final Cut within a library, but how would I get that to another editor with the same
See it this
metadata?
way. With Keyflow Pro, because it's a database, and as a program with a database, if we wanted to work on the same thing, we couldn't. The reason is, let's say that you have the main Keyflow Pro application running. That Keyflow Pro application is looking at the files on your NAS. If I wanted to tag anything, you would have to open ports on your router for me to connect to your Keyflow Pro over the internet. And then I would be reading those files that are on your NAS across the Atlantic, not on my NAS, because I cannot add my NAS to your Keyflow Pro. So that is already a problem in a work group. Now, here, all this information is written side by side with the file. So the file is in a folder. The metadata is within that same folder in a hidden file.
Wherever the files travel, that metadata comes along with it. It's a sidecar file.
Yes, actually, it's good that you're saying that. It's copy and move operations. I would say it's better to do with Kyno, because Kyno knows that metadata files are there and it's going to transfer with. If you would go into the folder where all your videos are and you do Command A and you transfer somewhere else, you're not copying the hidden files.
Can you show us on the Finder level what those hidden files look like?
Yes.
Then we can kind of see why Finder might not copy that in a copy operation.
Yes. So I'm going to my Kyno folder that all my files are here, card 1. And I can see all my video files, right? So I have here that MHL file, which is the report of everything that got copied. And here there is the hash information from each file that we were talking about before. So it's a nice thing to have here. Now, besides the MHL and the files themselves, you don't see anything else. If I do Command-Shift period to see hidden files, you're going to see that there is this folder here, and it has a LPMD file to get with the same name of my videos on Finder here. Now, if you're not set to see hidden files, so for example, if I'm set to see hidden files and do Command A, the hidden folder will be selected. But most people are not set to see hidden files. No one wants to be seeing hidden files. So with Command-Shift period, now if I select everything and then decide now to show the hidden files, you'll see that that's not selected.
So you would copy the media, but none of the references that Kyno generated.
So for example, I'm going to give that example now. If I copy this number 1 into my desktop, no, onto my downloads, Okay, that file now exists on my downloads folder. And I look into videos, go into list view. I see the name because the name is always there, right? But if I go into this file, you're going to see that none of that metadata that I had filled before is here because I copied just the file and not that hidden folder. Okay. Now, let's try that again. And I'm going to go back here. Now, let's try that again. I'm going to delete that from downloads. Deleting that from downloads. And I'm going to copy the hidden folder with the file. I'm going to put it in downloads. And now that hidden file actually even have the metadata from the other files, not only this one. And I go into here, downloads, and double click on it. Now I have all of that metadata here.
Okay. Now, how would you do that within Kyno?
Now, within Kyno, I will just go to where my media is, which is here, Kyno. I'm going to choose the number 1. That's the one I was doing. And I just drag, hold Option to copy to downloads. Okay. And that's it. Now on downloads here, I can double click and I see all the metadata will be there on the file.
Excellent.
Yeah, so the copy operation is pretty much the same as on Finder, but there is another thing that we can also do, which is, for example, let's say that I am looking here again at this. I'm going to go into my Mojave, users, Felipe, and it doesn't have anything there at the moment. What I want to do is to copy this. I'm going to just do Command C. I'm going to go on the folder that's supposed to go, and I'm going to go into File, Paste and Rename, or Command Shift V. And then I have the option to not only paste that file, but rename at the same time. So this is another way that you could do to copy stuff from your SD card into another folder and rename it all in one step.
There was another feature that I discovered when I was playing with the trial version that was apt for a project I'm working on right now. And it was the ability to bring in a bunch of media, mark specific ranges of those clips, and from Kyno export just those ranges as their own individual clips.
Yes, it's possible to do that. I haven't done, and we're going to end up doing for this.
Yes, well, also, I have a big project where I was in Chicago on a shoot for a day and a half where we had like 15 minutes per setup. And so within one take, I would get a wide, a medium, close-up, a bunch of different shots within one clip. But I have to deliver that media to somebody who can't handle the 4K files. So I was going to break that up into different pieces and convert to 1080. So for example, rather than send him a single video clip with wide, close-up, medium, so on and so forth, I'm going to break that into separate pieces. So with Kyno, I could just take a range for each of those portions and just zip them out. Whereas in Final Cut, I couldn't export those ranges from the browser. I'd have to bring each clip into the timeline, and if it's in the timeline, I'd have to export and mark each range one by one by one. So Kyno already, just for this one project, would save me a handful of hours of work.
Not only that, but for example, there is one here that there is another thing that's interesting. Okay, this one here that I had created, like you said, I have a range here, I have a subclip. Mm-hmm. There is a way that you can just make that range as a separate file. But it's not transcoding. It's going to only cut and rewrap. So there is almost no processing needed for that. I think I could just select the subclip and export as, rewrap to MOV. And I choose a new name. I'm going to put it in a proxy folder that I have created here. Mm-hmm. And so you see here the video is copying the video. Is copying the audio, so it's not doing any transcode. I could click on Start. Now, if I go into my proxy here, I see now that I actually have a video that's only that subclip, and that's it.
That's fantastic.
And if I go into Reviewing Finder, right-click, Showing Finder, there it is. Now it's a clip that's only 89 megabytes. This is something else that's actually very interesting, is all of this flexibility. So, for example, if you record it for an hour and a half, but the actual part that is the show is 30 minutes, you can go there and you trim the beginning, trim the end, rewrap that, and you have a file that's just the beginning to the end of the show.
A big thing for me with these sort of and I hesitate to call this media asset management. I mean, it kind of is, it kind of isn't. But with these types of apps is it takes some time to manually add this metadata. But with features like custom metadata sets and this built-in transcoding and the sidecar files that kind of, unless you're, you know, kind of mindlessly dragging from the Finder level, if you work within Kyno, it stays with the files. It's does the extra work you put into your files pay off at the end? And
Yes.
for me, it does on Finder, but I'm already now, by the end of this video, fully convinced to purchase Kyno because I can see so many ways where it'll help me not only with each project, but since most of my clients are repeat clients, it'll help me down the road.
Yeah, the biggest negative of Kyno, of course, is the price. I mean, you have to pay something for it, and it's like it can be very expensive if you would need all the features.
Okay, so say the premium version of Kyno is I think it's $349, and within the first year, all the updates they come at no additional cost, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And if say Kyno 1.7, the next version comes out in 2020 or in March of 2020, so more than a year has passed, do you have to pay another $350 for that version, or because
No.
it's a smaller subset?
It's a smaller. Once I look at the website, I think it's 169, and then you get another year of updates.
But if you don't pay, you still
You still can use the
continue
version
using
that
the
you have.
version that you have, which is great.
Yes.
So unlike the Adobe model, where if you stop paying, you can't even open your old projects, here
Yeah,
you
no.
still have what you paid for.
So yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, the investment that you've done, if today I paid for Kyno, everything that Kyno offers for me today will be continue offering me forever because I have the software, I can use this version forever.
Another thing I like about it is, as I mentioned in the beginning, you know, I use Final Cut Pro 10 very happily right now, but that software won't exist forever. So while I'm doing all of this, you know, assuming I purchase Kyno, all the work I do in there is going to go into Final Cut. But if I stop using Final Cut and say I switch to Resolve, all the work I put into this is maintained because I can
Yes.
bring that into Resolve and all the subclips are there, all the favorites, all that stuff is markers, is safe.
There are other things as well that are interesting. For example, none of these files here were recorded with Vlog, but if they would have been recorded with Vlog, I could right-click on it, and I could go to Camera LUT, and I could add my Panasonic Vlog LUT to here, and I would actually have all the thumbnails reflect the LUT, and I can play back with the LUT. Of course, again, this wasn't recorded in Vlog, so the LUT here doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's just to show that I can apply that LUT, that camera LUT to all my files or to a specific file.
All right. Well, and there are all kinds of other features that we haven't covered, but I kind of
Oh my
wanted
God,
to
there are
talk
so
about.
many features. Like
I wanted to
you
talk about the
can-
big ones.
Okay, I want to show you just one more. Just one more. I have all of this nice metadata that we added, all of this information. If I select everything, right click, and go into export Excel, and I'm gonna leave everything selected here just to have an idea. Click OK. Where do I save my Excel? I'm gonna save on my downloads folder. Okay. It's gonna take some time here to create this Excel because what it's doing is actually adding thumbnails and all the metadata from my clips into an Excel file. So this could be good for someone to create storyboards, for someone to create a report from everything that was shot in a given day. I mean, this is really up to the production and whoever is using this on how they're gonna use. But I found that quite useful. And if you use RedRaw, Kyno also supports RedRaw, so you can play back and preview and create keyword ranges and put all the metadata the same way that we put everything here. You can do that on RedRaw. And then once you finally send to Final Cut Pro 10, all of that comes already fully tagged and with all metadata. And I think it's extremely valuable, mainly for someone that would be probably a DIT, for example, on set.
Well, and I think we should mention that there are two pricing tiers for Kyno, and only the more expensive one offers the RedRaw support.
Correct. And I think they also have Frame.io integration, which I don't have access to it. I haven't asked for it. But for example, here it is the Excel file that they export. And when you look at this, it's awesome. I mean, I have the poster frame of the file. I have all the information that I added in description, the format. So it's giving me here resolution, the codec, time code, duration, the rating, if I put any, the tags.
I like that
and
feature.
all of that.
That's great. And we've shown video files, but this will also handle audio and images, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes. So far, I only concentrated here on videos. So if I go into audio, it's going to show me audio. It's going to be very similar to Keyflow Pro at this point, which doesn't have the waveforms here. And it doesn't have the waveforms, in this case, like lower than Keyflow Pro. It doesn't have waveforms when I go to play. But apparently that is something that they are working on, which is great. And I can be looking at just images as well. So it's not really a Finder replacement because you're not going to be looking at every single file type, but it's made for people that are working with video, audio, and images.
Specifically, designers, editors, motion graphics artists, musicians. Yeah. Okay. I'm convinced.
Cool. I mean, at this point, there are a few things that I changed on my workflow since we started Get a Grip. Right now, I rename my files on the Finder level or on the file level. I not using Finder anymore for importing or managing my media files. I'm using Kyno, and I'm also using Kyno to fill in all the metadata. So it's interesting how things are evolving even on my workflow. Yeah. And I'm actually very happy with that at this point.
That's great. I'm glad that I downloaded the trial and I was convinced a little bit early on, but having done the show with you now, I'm fully convinced to purchase Kyno. I can see it's saving me a ton of time and actually being kind of fun to work with.
Yes. One other thing, I don't know if it's going to work right now. Right now you can see I am importing the media from my memory card from today's Get a Grip. And you see that after I import, I'm adding that metadata preset with my name here. So it's all there. I can add some extra tag in case I want, but this is pretty much done right now. I can also import my audio file. I'm gonna give all the metadata information, and pretty much now all of this information that I added here is gonna reflect on Gabe's Synology, and he's going to be able to just go and send to Final Cut Pro 10, and he's going to have all of that metadata there.
Where do people go to download Kyno?
They can go on Kyno's website, which is lesspain.software. And of course, if you have any technical problems or anything like that, you just report that problem to them, and they're going to reply to you very quickly. That's my experience so far. When I had a file that was crashing Kyno, they got back to me within a few minutes, and I sent them the file, they fixed it, and it's all fixed now.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to kind of walk us through Kyno.
This is basically how I'm using Kyno at the moment with my workflow. It's possible that Gabe is going to end up buying and start using Kyno as well instead of just Finder and Automator. Who knows? But in case you liked this video, please click on subscribe, like this video, share, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.